Hello, this is a demonstration of the Wave USB FX app that will be available in the iOS App Store. I developed this app as a way to control a second laser projector that is being displayed on top of the first laser projector image. This app does also utilize background audio, so the app can be closed and other things can happen, and you can go back to the app without any interruption to the audio feed. Let me show you my current configuration here. I have an iPhone 16 connected to a USB-C to media adapter. I have power going in. I have a USB going to a hub. The hub has two USB connections, one going to a Wave USB Pro and the other going to a MIDI mix console. Coming into the Wave USB Pro, I have a signal coming from Pangolins Beyond, which I currently have running here. Its output, ILDA, is going in to the Wave USB Pro, as well as being split and going to one scan head of a projector. And the output of the Wave USB Pro is going to the other scan head of the projector. I also have audio in feeding into the Wave USB. And here's the projector, and it's displaying on the wall behind me. And I have another camera setup that I'll switch over to in a moment. Alright, so I also have a small gamepad controller, and I'll show how that can be utilized with the Wave USB FX app. Within the app, you can enable or disable the output with the live or muted button, and as you can see with the orientation test pattern behind me. So when configuring a laser projector, the top right tab is the projector control panel, where you can adjust XY gain, offset, as well as the controls on the right hand side of the screen that are for geometric correction. I also have 4 color profiles that can be selected that can be tuned to different settings for different projectors or different parts of a show, or however it's required. By selecting the configure button on the right, you can configure the RGB values for gain, offset, gamma, as well as midpoint. You can also rename the name of the profile so that you can save it, identify it for whatever projector or need that you have. None of these settings on the projector settings control panel are MIDI addressable or controllable. This is all meant to be set up prior to a show or anything like that. And once done, those can be left alone. From there, the rest of the controls, RGB, XY size gain, they can be linked together or unlinked. And these can all be MIDI addressable and controllable through the MIDI control panel, which I currently have a couple things selected, but there's quite a number of CC mappings as well as note mappings. Here I have from the MIDI mix console, I have 2 sliders that adjust X and Y size, and then 1 push button that will either link or unlink. So if I press the buttons, it receives the MIDI, processes it, and does what it has to do. They should be unlinked at the moment, so the 2 sliders adjust the image size individually. Whereas if I relink, now only 1 slider can control. Alright, so you can also save the MIDI profile or reload it or clear the settings by tapping a particular MIDI function. Now it's listening for any incoming MIDI. That's rotate Y. I can assign to, let's say, we'll just do this controller here, and you can see that the Y-axis is rotating. Alright, so let me clear out of this, and I will reset the Y-axis MIDI control. So some of the other options we have here, to the left of MIDI is the joystick control panel at the top next to the live button. From here you can adjust gain of X and Y from the joystick, as well as a damping function. Currently only the joystick part of the gamepad controls like this. As you can see, you can verify that it's working from within the control panel. Now the only way for this to actually affect an image is if you select either offset. If you tap the offset name, you see that it's changed. Now it has a little gamepad icon. So now this is fully controllable from the gamepad. Now if we uncheck that and check rotation offset, it's a similar appearing feature function. However, if I start to add, let's say we'll add z-axis rotation. Now when I start to apply rotation offset, you can see the difference between rotation offset and just regular image offset. As you can see, I'm going all the way up to the limit of where it can scan. That's why it's being cut off. So I'll turn that off. Once again, gain control that can be linked. Reset controls for the XYZ rotate as well as the offsets. Going back to the top of the screen, next to the live button is HDMI. When you connect HDMI, it will display on a monitor what it's outputting X and Y. So it's a digitized version of what it's displaying from a laser projector. It's kind of like having a preview window. There is no preview window within the app. It's not really developed to have one, except if you wanted one, you can connect an external HDMI, and that icon will turn green when that is connected. Okay, so to the left of the rotate functions here, we have an XY RGB delay. Now it's difficult to see what this does with this image, so I'm going to stop this image and display. We'll just do an abstract, and let me bring the size down a little bit of it. Now I will add a delay to XY RGB, and if I move this around, you can see the right image is coming directly from Pangolin Beyond, whereas the left image has a delay now that's being processed through the Wave USB and through the iOS app. And so that's what that does. And with two overlaying images from the two projectors, it creates some pretty interesting effects. So we'll reset that back to center and get rid of the XY RGB. Pixelate is another effect that I have here next to the XY RGB delay. And as I bring that up, you can see the effect that it has. All right. Now the other options we have here, and for them, let me go back to the test pattern. Okay, so from the test pattern, we can, at the top left, we have invert X and Y, as well as swap X and Y. As you can see, it's only affecting the projector on the projected image on the left, and then swap X and Y. And we'll uninvert those. Also down at the bottom left, we have a color map. So as you can see, the letter T is in red, and we could change that to be in yellow by remapping green to the red channel, to the red output channel. I can make the T completely white, and of course, green and blue individually are not being projected at all. However, I can change it to where blue is now getting the red signal, green is back to green, and blue is to red. So we'll reset that back to normal. Again, all that's MIDI addressable. You can see the VU meter there. I do have audio coming into the Wave USB. There is some audio reactive stuff that I have built in here. So when we go into the audio reactive, we can adjust overall gain of what we're getting and what we're processing with the rest of the stuff. So if I turn on RGB, you can see the image now is flickering to the music that's coming in. You may not hear the music. I can reassign, if I want the low frequencies to only hit on red, now they would from the color mapping at the bottom left. If I wanted the high frequencies to only hit on red, now they would from the map there at the bottom left. From here, I can adjust how bright I want the audio reactive stuff to be. If I want it to be substantially brighter than it is, or vice versa. That will not exceed the overall output brightness that's set by the projector control panel. So from here, we also have an XY that will affect the X and Y brightness, or I'm sorry, the X and Y size attempting to lock onto the beat of the music. So when I enable that, you can see what's going on with the test pattern. All right, I will turn these off for now. Actually, I'll leave the RGB off for now. The next thing I want to talk about is scope, which is an oscilloscope control panel here. There's 4 different functions within this. Now, this can operate completely standalone without having an external DAC creating an image. And what I mean by that, I'll stop what's coming from the Pangolin software and now have no image being projected. However, if I enable this, and right now I have the spiral function selected here, I would have the ring, Lissajous, or the ramp, but we'll go back to spiral. From here, if I enable that, it's now displaying just a solid RGB image based on what the audio reactive RGB values are set at. So we'll set those back to what they were and exit out of there and go back to the scope app. And from here, we can make adjustments to how fast this effect is going on, the X and Y gain, as well as so we also have the ability to blank this based on the audio that's coming in, and or a fixed blanking frequency. It just adds another layer of effect that you can have on top of this projected image. So this can also work with the audio reactive stuff. Let me turn on RGB and go back into here. So now you can see that the color is now being modulated by the audio coming into the Wave USB. So we also have the ring oscillator, which does that. Now we're affecting the scanned image by the audio that's coming in, as well as the color as well. So, and from there, there's just a real basic Lissajous and spirograph generator. If I select that, it just kind of modulates around based on the music to several of the presets that it has built in. To the left of that, I have a ramp generator. And this is the classic oscilloscope style function. It can be either a ramp, it could be a triangle wave, or it could be a sine wave. And again, all of this is selectable through MIDI or just right from the app itself. All right, and I will exit out of that. Turn that off and turn that off. And I believe that pretty much covers all the functions of the Wave USB FX. Thank you.